The metal detector didn't beep. The scanner didn't flash red. Yet, for the 5th time in 40 minutes, Officer Rick Buzz Paul snapped his latex gloves and pointed a thick, accusatory finger at the woman in the cashmere coat. "Step out of line. Now." The busy O'Hare terminal went silent. Jordan Banks, a woman who controlled a portfolio worth billions, didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just smiled, a cold, terrifying smile that usually appeared right before a hostile corporate takeover, or an arrest. Because Officer Paul didn't know he wasn't just harassing a CEO, he was harassing a federal asset with a badge buried deep in her carry-on, and his shift, and his life as he knew it, was about to end. The digital clock above the TSA checkpoint read 11:15 p.m. Outside the frosted glass walls of Chicago's O'Hare International Airport, the wind was howling, whipping snow against the tarmac in a frenzy that matched the chaos inside Terminal 3. It was New Year's Eve. Everyone was desperate to be somewhere else. Jordan Banks was no exception. At 38, Jordan carried herself with the kind of effortless precision that came from surviving both the south side of Chicago and the boardrooms of Silicon Valley. She wore a charcoal wool trench coat over a cream silk blouse, dark denim, and ankle boots that cost more than most people's first cars. Her luggage was a sleek, matte black Rimowa carry-on, battered slightly from a year of relentless travel. She wasn't just a CIO. She was the founder of Aegis Dynamics, a cybersecurity firm that contracted directly with the Department of Defense. But tonight, she was just a passenger in Group 1, trying to get home to D.C. to ring in the new year with her husband, David, and their twin daughters. "Boarding pass and ID," the agent at the podium grunted, not looking up. Jordan handed over her passport and phone. The screen displayed her status. TSA pre-check. Global entry. Clear. The agent scanned it, paused, and looked at her. His eyes lingered on her hair, long, intricate micro braids pulled back into a low, professional bun. He looked at her boots. Then he looked at the passport again. "Jordan Banks," he said, dragging out the vowels. "You traveling alone?" "Yes," Jordan said, her voice smooth and clipped. "Is there a problem?" "No problem," he muttered, shoving the documents back at her. "Lane 4. Jordan took her things and moved to lane 4. The pre-check lane was supposed to be the "keep your shoes on, keep your laptop in the bag" lane. It was supposed to be the sanctuary for the weary traveler. She placed her bag on the belt. She walked through the metal detector. Silence. She stepped out, reaching for her bag. "Mom?" The voice was sharp, cutting through the ambient hum of the terminal. Jordan turned. A TSA officer stood by the conveyor belt. His name tag read R. Paul. He was a heavy-set man with a buzz cut that was fighting a losing battle against a receding hairline, and eyes that looked like they were searching for a reason to be angry. "Is that your bag?" Paul asked, pointing at the matte black Rimowa. "It is," Jordan said. "I need to run it again. There's an anomaly," Paul said loudly. Too loudly. He didn't wait for her permission. He grabbed the handle and shoved it backward through the X-ray machine with aggressive force. Jordan took a breath. Fine, she thought. It's the holidays. They're on high alert. Just let it go. She waited. The bag came through a second time. Paul stared at the screen for a long, uncomfortable minute. He squinted. He tapped the glass. Then he looked at Jordan, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Bag check," he announced. He hauled the luggage onto the stainless steel search table. "Step over here, Mom. Hands where I can see them." "Is something wrong, officer?" Jordan asked, stepping closer. She checked her watch. 11:28 p.m. Her flight boarded in 20 minutes. "We'll see," Paul said. He unzipped the bag. He didn't just search it. He violated it. He pulled out her neatly folded silk blouses and dropped them on the dirty metal table. He opened her toiletry bag and squeezed the tubes of expensive moisturizer to check the consistency. He took out her laptop, a proprietary military-grade machine, and turned it over in his greasy hands. "This is a heavy computer," Paul remarked. "What do you do for work?" "I run a tech company," Jordan replied, her patience thinning. "I'm a consultant." Paul snorted. "Consultant? Right, that's what they all say." He picked up a pair of running shoes from the bottom of the bag. "These look worn. You run?" "Yes." He dropped the shoes on top of her silk blouse. "Okay, pack it up. You're good." He didn't offer to help her repack. He just walked away, wiping his hands on his pants. Jordan clenched her jaw. She quickly folded her clothes, feeling the eyes of the other passengers burning into her back. She zipped the bag, grabbed the handle and walked toward the gate. She made it 10 feet. "Mum! The one in the grey coat! Stop!" It was Paul again. He was standing by the body scanner now, waving her back. "Me?" Jordan pointed to herself, disbelief washing over her. "Yeah, you. Random selection. I need you to go through the body scanner." "I'm pre-check," Jordan said, her voice dropping an octave. "I just went through the metal detector. I just had my bag searched." "It's a randomizer, sweetheart," Paul said, stepping into her personal space. "Computer picks a number. You're the number. Unless you don't want to fly today." Jordan looked at him. She saw the glint in his eyes. This wasn't a computer selection. This was a power trip. She turned around and walked back to the security checkpoint. The second search was worse than the first. Because Jordan had already cleared the checkpoint, she had to technically exit and re-enter the sterile area, which caused a bottleneck. A chorus of groans erupted from the line of travelers behind her. "Sorry," Jordan murmured to a young mother, struggling with a stroller. "He called me back." She stepped into the millimeter wave scanner, the glass tube where you have to hold your arms up like a surrender. Whoosh! The machine spun. "Step out," Paul commanded. Jordan stepped out. "Alarm on the groin and hair," Paul announced to the room. Jordan froze. "Excuse me?" "The machine flagged your groin and your hair," Paul said, his voice carrying the distinct tone of theatrical performance. He looked at his colleague, a younger woman named Officer Sarah Jenkins, who looked uncomfortable. "Jenkins, pat down. Full resistance check." "Officer," Jordan said, turning to Paul, her eyes hardening into flint. "I have no metal in my hair. These are braids, and I certainly have nothing in my groin area. This is harassment." Paul stepped closer, crossing his arms. The badge on his chest gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Look, lady, you can argue with me, and we can call the LEOs, law enforcement officers, over to take you to a private room, and you definitely miss your flight. Or you can let Jenkins do her job. Your choice." Jordan looked at the clock. 11:40 p.m. "Do it," Jordan said tightly. Officer Jenkins approached tentatively. "I'm sorry, Ma'am," she whispered, snapping on fresh gloves. "I have to use the back of my hands for sensitive areas." Jordan stood in the middle of the checkpoint, legs spread, arms out, while hundreds of people watched. She stared directly at Paul the entire time. He didn't look away. He watched with a sickening sense of satisfaction as Jenkins ran her hands down Jordan's torso, checked the waistband of her jeans, and then patted down her hair, squeezing the bun. "She's clear, Buzz," Jenkins said, stepping back. "Nothing." Paul looked disappointed. "Run her hands for explosives." Jenkins blinked. "Buzz, she's pre-check. Run her hands." Jenkins swabbed Jordan's palms and inserted the sample into the ETD, explosive trace detection, machine. Jordan waited. The machine analyzed. Green light. Clear. "She's clean," Jenkins said, relief evident in her voice. Paul chewed his lip. He looked like a gambler who had just lost a hand but refused to leave the table. "Fine. Go." Jordan didn't say a word. She grabbed her bag and walked away. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Not from fear, but from a rage so cold it felt like ice in her veins. She needed to get to the gate. She needed to make a phone call. She walked briskly toward the tram that would take her to Concourse C. She was halfway down the long hallway, the moving walkway humming beneath her boots, when she heard the squawk of a radio behind her. Then, heavy footsteps. Running. "Stop! Security! Stop that woman!" Jordan stopped. She closed her eyes for a brief second, inhaling deeply through her nose. "You have got to be kidding me." She turned around. It wasn't Paul this time. It was two airport police officers, hand on their holsters, jogging toward her. Paul was waddling behind them, pointing. "That's her!" Paul yelled, breathless. "She grabbed something from the bin. I saw her. She swiped a passenger's watch." The crowd gasped. A man in a suit clutched his briefcase. A woman pulled her child closer. Jordan stood perfectly still as the police officers surrounded her. "Mom, put the bag down," the first officer, a tall man with the nameplate SGT. Kowalski ordered. "I didn't take anything," Jordan said calmly. "Officer Paul is targeting me. This is the third time he's stopped me in 20 minutes. "We have a report of theft," Kowalski said sternly. "We need to search your person and your bag." "Again." "Right here?" Jordan asked. "In the middle of the hallway." "Unless you want to go to the station," Paul chimed in, catching up. He was grinning now, a wide, predatory grin. "We can do it right here. Let everyone see what kind of thief you are." Jordan looked at Paul. She realized then that this wasn't just bias. This was sport for him. He was bored on New Year's Eve, and he wanted to break the rich black woman in the expensive coat. He wanted to see her cry. He wanted her to beg. Jordan looked at Kowalski. "Officer, I am the CEO of Aegis Dynamics. I have a TS-SCI clearance. If you search me again based on this man's lie, you are going to regret it." Paul laughed, a loud barking sound. "Yeah, and I'm the King of England. Open the bag, sweetheart." Kowalski hesitated, looking at Jordan's demeanor. She didn't look like a thief. She looked like someone who commanded armies. But Paul was the TSA supervisor on the floor. "Open the bag, Mom," Kowalski said. Jordan knelt on the floor of the terminal. For the third time, she unzipped her Rimowa. Paul stepped forward and kicked the side of the bag with his boot, accidentally knocking it over. Whoops! Clumsy. Her clothes spilled out onto the dirty airport carpet. Her undergarments, her paperwork, her toiletries. A few people in the crowd laughed. Most looked away in embarrassment. Jordan didn't scramble to pick them up. She slowly stood up, leaving the mess on the floor. She reached into the inner pocket of her trench coat. "Whoa! Hands!" Kowalski shouted, reaching for his taser. "I'm getting my phone," Jordan said, her voice cutting like a razor. "I'm calling my lawyer, and then I'm calling the director of the FBI." Paul rolled his eyes. "Oh, save it. You're not calling anyone until we find that watch." He knelt down and began digging through her scattered belongings, tossing them aside with disdain. He picked up a leather folder. He shook it. He picked up her toiletry bag and dumped it out. "Nothing here," Paul muttered. He stood up, red-faced. "Check her pockets. She probably put it in her coat." Kowalski looked at Jordan. "Ma'am, I need you to empty your pockets." Jordan stared at him. "No." The hallway went silent. "Excuse me?" Paul stepped in. "You don't say no to us." "I said no," Jordan repeated. "I have been searched 3 times. I have been groped. I have been swabbed. I have been accused of a felony. I am done." Paul's face turned a shade of purple. "That's it. Cuff her, resisting a federal screening, disturbing the peace. Kowalski reached for his handcuffs. "Ma'am, turn around." Jordan didn't move. She looked past them, down the hallway. She needed an out. She needed a witness. And then she saw him. Walking out of the Delta Sky Club, holding a coffee, was Harrison Ford. Not the actor. Harrison Ford, the Deputy Director of Homeland Security for the Midwest region, a man she had consulted with on a classified data breach 2 months ago in D.C. "Harrison!" Jordan's voice rang out, clear and authoritative. The man in the suit stopped. He turned. He squinted through his glasses. His eyes went wide. "Jordan?" He started walking toward them, faster now. "Jordan Banks? What the hell is going on here?" Paul spun around. "Back off, sir. Police business. This woman is a thief." Harrison Ford ignored Paul. He walked right up to Kowalski. "Why is Jordan Banks, the head of the DoD's primary cyber defense contractor, being threatened with handcuffs?" Paul blinked. The confidence faltered slightly. She stole a watch. I saw it." "You saw it?" Harrison asked. He looked at Jordan. "Harrison," Jordan said, her voice deadly calm. "This officer has stopped me 3 times. He has sexually harassed me. He has dumped my belongings on the floor. And now he's accusing me of theft because I wouldn't let him humiliate me further." Harrison looked at the mess on the floor. Then he looked at Paul. "Officer," Harrison said, pulling a wallet from his jacket and flipping it open. A silver badge with the Department of Homeland Security crest shimmered in the light. "I'm Deputy Director Ford. Who is your supervisor?" Paul's face went pale. The smirk vanished. Manager Holloway is on break." "Get him," Harrison barked. "Now!" Paul scrambled for his radio, but it wasn't over. Not for Jordan. "Harrison," she said softly. "I don't just want his supervisor. I want his badge." Harrison looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes. He knew that look. He'd seen it across the table at the Pentagon. "Jordan," he said, "you have a flight to catch." "Not anymore," she said. She reached down and picked up her leather folder from the floor. She dusted it off. "I'm not leaving," she said, looking Paul dead in the eye as he stammered into his radio. "Not until he is fired and arrested." She opened the folder and pulled out a small, black leather wallet of her own. She flipped it open. Next to her driver's license was a gold shield. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Consultant. She held it up so Paul could see it clearly. "You wanted to search me, Officer Paul?" she whispered. "You found me." The silence that descended on the hallway of Terminal 3 was heavy, suffocating. It was the kind of silence that usually follows a gunshot. But here, it followed the flash of gold leather and enamel. Officer Rick Paul stared at the badge. His brain, wired for aggression and simple binary commands, stop, go, search, clear, couldn't process the visual input. He blinked, his thick eyelashes fluttering rapidly. He looked at the badge, then at Jordan's face, then back at the badge. "That's fake," Paul blurted out. His voice cracked, losing the baritone boom he had used to terrorize passengers all night. "You bought that online, eBay. I've seen him before." He reached out, his meaty hand grabbing for the wallet. "Give me that. Possession of forged federal credentials is a felony." "Touch me one more time," Jordan said, her voice barely a whisper. Yet it carried the weight of a gavel striking wood. "And you will be facing assault on a federal officer, in addition to the civil rights violations you've already racked up." Sergeant Kowalski, the airport police officer, had been reaching for Jordan's arm. But the moment he saw the letters, FBI and Special Consultant, his training kicked in. He didn't know if it was real, but he knew the risk of being wrong. He took a sharp step back, his hand hovering uncertainly over his taser. "Paul," Kowalski warned, his tone shifting. "Back off. Let's verify." "Verify what? She's a thief!" Paul screamed, spittle flying from his lips. The panic was setting in now. He could feel the gaze of Harrison Ford, the deputy director of DHS, burning a hole through his cheap uniform. He could see the cell phones of 50 strangers held aloft, recording his meltdown. He had to be right. If he wasn't right, he was dead. "She stole a Rolex. I saw her palm it from the bin while I was checking the laptop. It's in her bra. I guarantee it." Harrison Ford stepped into the circle. He was a man of quiet power, wearing a suit that cost more than Paul made in a month. He didn't look at Paul. He looked at Jordan. "Jordan," Harrison said softly, "you know the protocol. If an accusation is made—" "I know," Jordan cut him off. Her eyes remained locked on Paul. She was memorizing him. Not just his face, but the sweat beading on his upper lip, the tremor in his left hand, the way his pupils were dilated. She was analyzing him like a piece of malware code, looking for the exploit. "He wants to search me again. That's what this is about. It's not about a watch. It's about power. He didn't get the reaction he wanted when he groped me, so now he wants to strip me." "I want the truth," Paul shouted, playing to the crowd now. "I'm protecting the public." A walkie-talkie squawked loudly, breaking the tension. "This is Manager Holloway," a tinny voice came through. "What is the hold-up at C checkpoint? We are backing up to the entrance." "Manager!" Paul grabbed his radio, pressing the button so hard his knuckles turned white. "I have a non-compliant passenger. Suspected theft. High-value item. She's claiming federal affiliation. I need authorization to move to a private screening room." There was a pause on the radio. Then, "Bring her to room 4B. I'm on my way down." Paul smirked. It was a reflex, a muscle memory of victory. He looked at Jordan. "Room 4B. Soundproof. No cameras. We'll find that watch." Jordan slowly bent down and began to gather her things. She didn't rush. She picked up her silk blouse, shaking off the dust. She picked up her laptop. She placed them into the Rimowa case with deliberate care. Harrison Ford moved to help her, but she held up a hand. "No, Harrison. Let him see. Let everyone see." She zipped the bag. She stood up, smoothing the front of her trench coat. She looked like a queen preparing for an execution. Not her own, but someone else's. "You want to go to a private room, Officer Paul?" Jordan asked. "Lead the way. But understand this. Once that door closes, you are locked in there with me." Paul laughed, a nervous, hacking sound. "I think you got that backwards, sweetheart." He gestured for Kowalski to escort her. The procession began. Paul in the lead, swaggering but stiff. Jordan in the middle, head high, flanked by police. Harrison Ford trailing behind, furiously typing on his BlackBerry, calling in the cavalry. As they passed the line of passengers, the young mother Jordan had spoken to earlier shouted out, "She didn't take anything. I was watching her." "Mind your business," Paul snapped over his shoulder. Jordan didn't look back. She was entering a state of cold focus. She was no longer a traveler. She was Aegis. She was the shield. And she was about to bring the sword. Room 4B was exactly as Jordan expected. It was a windowless box, painted a depressing shade of institutional beige. The air smelled of stale coffee, floor wax, and fear. In the corner stood a metal table and 2 uncomfortable chairs. A large mirror on one wall indicated an observation room on the other side, though Jordan knew it was likely empty at this hour on New Year's Eve. The door slammed shut with a heavy metallic thud, sealing them in. It was just the 4 of them now. Jordan, Paul, Sergeant Kowalski, and Officer Jenkins, the female agent who had conducted the pat-down earlier. She had been dragged along by Paul as a witness, though she looked like she wanted to vomit. "Put the bag on the table," Paul commanded. He was pacing the small room, his energy erratic. He felt the walls closing in, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. He needed that watch to be there. He needed to be the hero. Jordan placed the black Rimowa on the table. She didn't sit down. She stood with her back to the mirror, her posture perfect. "Sit," Paul barked. "I prefer to stand," Jordan replied. "I said sit." Paul slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed in the small room. Kowalski shifted uncomfortably. "Paul, take it down a notch. We're just waiting for Holloway." "I don't need Holloway to conduct a search incidental to an arrest," Paul argued, turning on the police officer. "She is in custody." "I am not in custody," Jordan corrected him calmly. "I am detained. There is a difference that will cost the TSA roughly $3 million in the lawsuit I will file on Tuesday morning." Paul got into her face. He was close enough that she could smell the onions he'd had for lunch. "You think you're smart? You think because you got a fancy job and a fake badge you're better than me? I see people like you every day, walking through here like you own the place, cutting the lines, looking down your nose at the working man." "I was in line," Jordan said. "I followed every rule. You are the one breaking them. We'll see." Paul turned to Jenkins. "Sarah, strip search. Now." Jenkins's eyes went wide. "Buzz." "No, we can't. Not without a warrant or a direct visual on the contraband. That's policy." "I have probable cause," Paul screamed. "I saw the bulge in her bra. She's smuggling stolen goods." "You saw a bulge?" Jordan asked, her voice dripping with ice. "Or did you just want to see one?" Paul's face turned a violent shade of crimson. "That's it. If you won't do it, Jenkins, I'll call in a female LEO, or maybe I'll just assist." "Paul!" Kowalski stepped forward, hand on his chest. "You are out of your mind. You touch her, I arrest you. Do you understand?" The room was a powder keg. And then the door opened. Arthur Holloway walked in. He was a thin, tired-looking man with a clipboard and a stain on his tie. He looked at the scene, his lead officer screaming, a cop holding him back, and a woman in a trench coat watching it all like it was a boring television show. "What in God's name is going on here?" Holloway asked. "She's a thief, Artie," Paul pleaded, pointing at Jordan. "Stole a Rolex, refused search, fake FBI credentials. She's dangerous." Holloway looked at Jordan. He adjusted his glasses. "Ma'am, I'm the TSA manager. I need to ask you to—" "Mr. Holloway," Jordan interrupted. She didn't raise her voice, but she commanded the room instantly. "My name is Jordan Banks. I am the CEO of Aegis Dynamics. The badge I showed your officer is authentic, issued by the Cyber Division of the FBI, where I serve as a Tier 1 consultant on domestic terror threats." She paused, letting the titles sink in. "Your officer," she continued, pointing a manicured finger at Paul without looking at him, "has stopped me 4 times. He has sexually harassed me. He has publicly defamed me. And just now, he solicited a strip search based on a fabrication about a stolen watch. I am currently recording this conversation via the device on my wrist." She tapped her watch. A tiny red light was pulsing. Paul froze. He looked at the watch. He hadn't noticed it. That's illegal," Paul stammered. "Two-party consent state." "Illinois is a two-party consent state for private conversations," Jordan corrected him, her mind sharp as a razor. "However, there is no expectation of privacy for public officials performing their duties in a government facility, especially when evidence of a crime is being documented. The crime being yours, Officer Paul." Holloway looked at Paul. He looked at the watch. He looked at the calm, terrifying woman. "Paul," Holloway said, his voice trembling. "Did you see the watch? Did you actually see it?" I saw a glimmer. Paul backpedaled. She reached into the bin. She did something suspicious. A glimmer? Jordan repeated. So we went from, I saw her palm it, to a glimmer? She has it, Paul insisted, desperate. Check the bag. Check the lining. Just check it one more time. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But check it. This was the fifth search. The desperation search. Jordan looked at Holloway. If you open that bag again, you are complicit. But if it ends this, do it. Dump it out. Tear the lining. Do whatever you need to do to satisfy his ego. Because when you find nothing, I want his badge on this table before I leave this room. Holloway hesitated. He looked at Paul, who was sweating profusely. He looked at the bag. Do it, Artie, Paul hissed. It's in there, I know it. Holloway sighed. He stepped up to the remover. He unzipped it. For the fifth time that night, Jordan's belongings were exposed. Holloway was more respectful than Paul, but he was thorough. He checked the pockets. He squeezed the clothes. He ran his hand along the lining. He opened the side compartments. The room was silent, save for the rustle of fabric. Paul watched, his eyes darting back and forth. It has to be there. It has to be. Holloway lifted the laptop. Nothing. He checked the shoes. Nothing. He turned the bag upside down and shook it. A piece of lint drifted to the floor. Holloway placed the bag back on the table. He looked at Paul. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, heavy and damning. There is nothing here, Rick, Holloway said quietly. Paul's mouth opened and closed. She must have swallowed it, or she handed it off to the guy, the DHS guy. They're working together. Kowalski groaned and rubbed his temples. Paul, shut up. Just shut up. Jordan stepped forward. She didn't look triumphant. She looked lethal. Are we done? She asked Holloway. Yes. Yes, Ma'am, I apologize. You are free to go. I'm not going anywhere, Jordan said. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen 3 times. I just sent a priority signal to the FBI field office in Chicago, she said. And I have Deputy Director Ford outside with airport security. You see, Officer Paul, you didn't just harass a passenger. You interfered with a federal asset during a Code Orange holiday alert. She took a step closer to Paul. He shrank back, hitting the wall. You wanted to know what I do, she whispered. I hunt predators. I find people who abuse their power in dark rooms, and I drag them into the light. You thought I was a random selection? No. Tonight, you were the random selection. And you failed. There was a sharp knock at the door. It swung open. Harrison Ford stood there. But he wasn't alone. Behind him were 2 men in dark suits with earpieces and a uniformed Chicago PD captain. Jordan, Harrison said. We're ready. Jordan turned to Paul. Officer Paul, I believe your shift is over. The air in room 4B had shifted. Minutes ago, it was a claustrophobic cell where Rick Paul played the warden. Now, with the arrival of Deputy Director Harrison Ford and the 2 FBI agents flanking him, the room felt less like a detention center and more like a courtroom. And Rick Paul was the defendant. Harrison Ford didn't shout. Men with his level of clearance rarely did. He simply closed the door behind him, sealing the room from the curious eyes of the terminal, and walked over to the metal table. He looked at the disheveled contents of Jordan's luggage, then at Paul, whose bravado was evaporating like steam on a cold window. Agent Vance, Agent Greer, Harrison said, nodding to the 2 men in suits. Secure the door. No one leaves. No one enters, especially not union reps. Not yet. Hey, wait a minute, Paul stammered, his voice jumping an octave. You can't just lock us in here. I have rights. I'm a federal employee. You were a federal employee, Jordan corrected him. She hadn't moved from her spot. She stood with the stillness of a statue, her eyes tracking Paul's every twitch. Right now, you are a subject of interest in an active counterintelligence investigation. Paul let out a wet, incredulous laugh. Counterintelligence? Are you insane? I was looking for a watch, a Casio, or a Rolex. Whatever. You compromised a Tier 1 asset, Harrison said, his voice dropping to a gravelly low. He pulled out a chair and sat down, unbuttoning his suit jacket. Do you know what is on that laptop you were manhandling, Mr. Paul? Paul looked at the matte black computer sitting on the table. It's a laptop, just a computer. That computer, Jordan said, her voice soft but filling the room, contains the cryptographic keys for the navigational systems of the U.S. Navy's Pacific Fleet. I am manually transporting it to D.C. for a hard-line update. It is air-gapped for a reason. And you— She paused, tilting her head. You took it out. You flipped it over. You smeared your grease on the biometric scanner. And you detained me for 45 minutes, exposing me and that device to potential surveillance in a public terminal. Paul's face went grey. The blood drained out of him so fast he looked waxen. I didn't know. Ignorance isn't a defense when you violate protocol. Agent Vance spoke up from the door. He was holding a tablet, tapping on it furiously. I'm pulling your file, Paul. Richard J. Paul. 10 years TSA. 14 complaints of profiling. 3 sexual harassment settlements paid out by the agency to avoid court. You're expensive, Paul. Manager Holloway, who had been trying to merge with the beige wall, made a small squeaking sound. We addressed those complaints. Retraining. Sensitivity modules. Modules! Harrison scoffed. He looked at Holloway with profound disappointment. You let a man with a god complex run your checkpoint on the busiest night of the year, targeting a black woman who happens to be the only person in this airport who outranks me. Harrison turned back to Paul. Jordan didn't steal a watch. You know that? We know that. So why? Why did you stop her 5 times? Paul swallowed hard. He looked at his boots. He looked at the mirror. He realized there was no camera in here, but the recording light on Jordan's wrist was still blinking, a steady, rhythmic red eye. Paul started, his voice barely audible. I didn't like her attitude. She looked like she thought she was better than us, walking through pre-check with that coat. The way she looked at me, like I was nobody. So you decided to punish her, Jordan said. She stepped closer. You used the authority of the United States government to soothe your own insecurity. You stripped me of my dignity because you felt small. I was doing my job, Paul snapped, a final flare of defiance. I have discretion, if I see something suspicious. You saw nothing, Jordan cut him off. You saw a woman you wanted to break. That is a violation of Title 18, Section 242 of the U.S. Code. Deprivation of rights under color of law. It's a federal crime, Paul. Punishable by prison time. The word prison hung in the air. Paul looked at Kowalski. Sarge, you gonna let them talk to me like this? We're on the same side. Sergeant Kowalski, who had remained silent near the door, slowly shook his head. He unhooked his radio from his belt. No, Paul. We aren't. I enforce the law. You just broke it. Kowalski turned to the Chicago PD captain, who had entered with Harrison. Captain, do you want to take jurisdiction, or does the FBI want him? We'll take him for now, the FBI agent, Vance, said. Interfering with a federal agent is our purview, but the theft accusation, that needs to be cleared up. There was a theft, Paul cried out, desperate to cling to the one shred of justification he had left. I saw it. The passenger. Tall guy, red scarf. He said his watch was gone. She was right there. "Let's find out," Jordan said. She picked up her phone. "Harrison, patch into the airport security grid. Pull the footage from checkpoint 3, lane 4. Timestamp 11:25 p.m. to 11:40 p.m. Harrison nodded. He tapped his phone, casting the video feed to the smart monitor mounted on the wall of the interrogation room. The screen flickered to life, grainy black and white footage of the chaos at the checkpoint. They watched in silence. There was Jordan, placing her bag on the belt. There was Paul, shoving it back. There was the stolen watch incident. A man in a red scarf was indeed patting his pockets, looking distressed. He looked at the bin Jordan had just used. He looked at Jordan's back as she walked away. Paul pointed at the screen. See, he's looking for it. She took it." "Keep watching," Jordan commanded. On the screen, the man in the red scarf looked around. He lifted his own coat from the bin. He shook it. Nothing. He looked panicked. Then a TSA agent, a young kid, not Paul, walked over. He lifted the plastic grey bin up. There, stuck to the bottom of the bin by a piece of gum or static, was a gold watch. The man grabbed it. He laughed. He shook the young agent's hand. He put the watch on his wrist and walked toward the gate. The room went deadly silent. Paul stared at the screen. His mouth hung open. The loop played again. The watch was never stolen. It was never missing. It was a misunderstanding resolved in 30 seconds. He found it," Paul whispered. "Yes," Jordan said. "He found it 20 minutes ago, while you were dragging me down the hallway, while you were dumping my underwear on the floor, while you were demanding a strip search." She leaned in close to Paul. "You didn't care about the watch, Rick. You didn't even check to see if it was found. You just needed an excuse." Harrison stood up. He buttoned his jacket. "Agent Vance," Harrison said. "Read him his rights." Paul's knees gave out. He slumped into the chair, the metal groaning under his weight. "No," Paul whimpered. "Please. It's New Year's Eve. My kids. I'm supposed to be off at midnight." "You are off," Jordan said, picking up her Rimowa bag. Permanently. The arrest of Officer Rick Paul was not done in the quiet privacy of Room 4B. Jordan Banks wouldn't allow it. "He humiliated me in public," Jordan told Harrison as they prepared to leave the room. "He marched me through the terminal like a criminal. I want the same courtesy extended to him." Harrison looked at her. He saw the fatigue in her eyes, but also the steel. He nodded. "Captain O'Malley, cuff him, front and center." The door to Room 4B opened. The noise of the terminal rushed in, a roar of travelers, announcements, and the distant sound of holiday music. It was 11:50 p.m., 10 minutes to the New Year. The procession emerged, but this time the dynamic was inverted. Jordan Banks walked in the lead, her head high, pulling her matte black Rimowa with one hand, her other hand holding her phone. Behind her walked Sergeant Kowalski and the Chicago PD captain, and between them, hands cuffed behind his back, stripped of his badge and his shoulder boards, walked Rick Paul. He wasn't swaggering anymore. His head was down, chin tucked into his chest. He was weeping. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook his heavy frame. The terminal went quiet as they passed. The grapevine of an airport is faster than fiber optics. Word had spread. The lady in the cashmere coat wasn't a thief. The loudmouth TSA agent was in cuffs. People stopped dragging their luggage. They stood up from the gate seating. Phones came out. A sea of glowing screens raised to record the walk of shame. "Is that him?" someone whispered. "Yeah, that's the guy who was screaming at everyone. He got arrested on New Year's." Paul flinched at the flashes of the cameras. He tried to hide his face, but there was nowhere to go. This was the same hallway where he had made Jordan kneel. the same carpet where he had kicked her bag. As they passed the security checkpoint, Paul's Kingdom, the line had stopped moving. The other TSA agents were standing still, watching. Officer Jenkins, the woman Paul had bullied into the pat-down, was standing by the glass barrier. She saw Paul in handcuffs. She saw Jordan walking free. Jordan stopped. She turned to Jenkins. The crowd held its breath. "Officer Jenkins," Jordan said. Her voice was calm, audible over the ambient hum. Jenkins flinched. "Yes, ma'am?" "You did your job," Jordan said. "You were put in a bad position by a bad supervisor. But you followed the book as best you could. Write your report honestly." Jenkins nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I will. I'm sorry, ma'am." "Don't be sorry," Jordan said. "Be better than him." She gestured to Paul. They continued the walk. They reached the exit of the sterile area where the airport police station was located. Harrison Ford stopped. He turned to Jordan. "We have to take him in for processing," Harrison said. "It's going to be a long night of paperwork. Do you want to come to the station to file the formal statement now, or wait until morning?" Jordan looked at Paul. He looked broken. A small man who had borrowed a big shadow, now shrinking back to his true size. "I'll come in the morning," Jordan said. "I have a flight to catch, and I believe the airline is holding it for me." "They are," Harrison confirmed with a smile. "Gate K-12. You have 7 minutes before the ball drops." Jordan looked at Paul one last time. "Happy New Year, Rick," she said. She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked toward the tram, her heels clicking a steady rhythm on the terrazzo floor. Paul watched her go. He watched the woman he had tried to break walk away untouched, while he was being steered toward a holding cell that smelled of bleach and regret. As Jordan stepped onto the escalator, the PA system crackled. "Attention passengers, the countdown to the new year has begun. 10, 9. The terminal erupted in cheers. People were hugging. Champagne corks were popping in the bars. 8, 7. Jordan reached the top of the escalator. She was exhausted. Her body ached from the tension, but she felt lighter. 6, 5. She saw the gate. The agent was waving her forward. The jet bridge was open. 4, 3. She handed her boarding pass to the agent. "Miss Banks?" the agent asked, looking at her screen. "We heard what happened. The pilot asked us to hold the door. We upgraded you to first class." Jordan smiled. A real smile this time. 2, 1. "Happy New Year!" the terminal screamed in unison. "Happy New Year!" Jordan whispered to herself. She walked down the jet bridge, leaving the noise, the chaos, and Officer Rick Paul behind her. But as she stepped onto the plane, she knew the story wasn't quite over. Karma had struck, but the ripples were just beginning. The first sunrise of the new year didn't bring a hangover for Jordan Banks. It brought vindication. She sat on the terrace of her home in Georgetown, D.C., a steaming mug of coffee in her hands. The Potomac River flowed quietly in the distance, a stark contrast to the chaotic neon frenzy of O'Hare just hours prior. Her husband, David, sat across from her, scrolling through his iPad with a look of stunned disbelief. "Jordan," he said, looking up, "have you looked at the internet this morning?" "I haven't," she replied, taking a sip. "I wanted a quiet morning with the girls before the storm hits." "The storm isn't hitting," David said, turning the screen toward her. "It's already a hurricane, and you're the eye of it." On the screen was a video from TikTok that had been reposted to Twitter, Instagram, and every major news outlet. It was the footage of her walking through the terminal, head high, while Officer Rick Paul shuffled behind her in handcuffs, weeping. The caption read, "TSA bully messed with the wrong one. FBI boss ends his career in 4K. It had 42 million views. Jordan watched the video. She saw herself, calm, composed, unyielding. But more importantly, she read the comments. Thousands of stories poured in from strangers who had been harassed by power-tripping officials, people who felt small and helpless in the face of authority. They were cheering for her. They were calling it the walk of justice. But the real satisfaction wasn't the likes or the shares. It was the phone call she received an hour later. It was Harrison Ford. "Happy New Year, Jordan." His voice came through the speakerphone, sounding tired but cheerful. "Harrison, did you get any sleep?" "A few hours. I spent most of the night at the precinct, processing the paperwork for your friend, Mr. Paul." "And?" Jordan asked, leaning forward. "The TSA fired him effective 08:00 a.m. this morning," Harrison reported. "Gross misconduct, violation of federal screening procedures, and conduct unbecoming. He loses his pension. He loses his benefits. And because the district attorney is looking to make an example out of security theater bullies, they are pressing charges for false imprisonment and filing a false police report." Jordan nodded slowly. "And the theft accusation?" "Dropped, obviously. But here is the kicker," Harrison chuckled. "During the investigation into his past conduct, prompted by your little visit to room 4B, they found a pattern. It turns out Paul had a habit of confiscating prohibited items that weren't actually prohibited. High-end colognes, electronics, cash. He was running a little eBay store out of his garage." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "So he wasn't just a bully. He was a thief." "Exactly. The FBI is raiding his house as we speak. You didn't just end his shift, Jordan. You took down a fencing operation." Jordan hung up the phone and looked out at the river. She thought about the moment in the terminal when she almost gave up, when she almost let him search the bag just to make it stop. It would have been easier. It would have been faster. But she remembered the look on Officer Jenkins's face, the young woman terrified of her own boss. She remembered the mother with the stroller who was afraid to speak up. 3 days later, Jordan filed a civil lawsuit against the TSA and Rick Paul personally. The settlement was swift. The government wanted the PR nightmare to go away. They offered $3 million. Jordan accepted. She didn't keep a dime. She stood on the steps of the courthouse the following week, cameras flashing, and announced the creation of the Travelers' Rights Defense Fund, a non-profit dedicated to providing legal counsel for passengers who are profiled, harassed, or wrongfully detained at American airports. "Authority without accountability is tyranny," Jordan told the press, her voice ringing out clearly. Officer Paul thought he was the law. He forgot that the law serves the people, not the ego of the person wearing the badge. Back at O'Hare, the atmosphere at Terminal 3 had changed. The agents were more polite. The shouting had stopped. And every time a passenger in a nice coat walked through the metal detector, the new supervisors would hold their breath for a second, wondering if maybe, just maybe, this was another Jordan Banks. Rick Paul was awaiting trial, his life dismantled by his own arrogance. He had searched Jordan 5 times, looking for something to use against her. In the end, he found exactly what he was looking for: the truth. And it crushed him. This story is a powerful reminder that intimidation often masks insecurity. Officer Paul believed his uniform gave him the right to belittle others, but he made the fatal mistake of judging a book by its cover. Jordan Banks didn't just stand up for herself. She stood up for everyone who has ever been bullied by someone in a position of petty power. Her victory wasn't just in the badge she carried, but in the composure she kept. It proves that when you stay calm, know your rights, and refuse to be broken, the truth will eventually come to light. And sometimes, karma hits back with federal force. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It helps get this story out to more people. Have you ever dealt with a power-tripping official or a rude employee who went too far? I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below and let me know how you handled it. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.